Hello, I am the Peace Student. Have you ever been far from home? It's a bit exciting and a bit scary. Now imagine being far from home and traveling by night through a distant forest. You have no idea what kind of animals are in there. Every rustle in the bushes knocks the heart right out of you. There's predators here, and nighttime is when they hunt. I can still hear my tires crunching as I pedaled quickly down that gravel trail. It was getting pretty dark, and a lot of the animal sounds that I was hearing were unrecognizable. The sounds were all around me. I could hear the coyotes running around, nipping at each other in the dark. The devil hounds. They seemed to be keeping pace with me, but why were they following me? Were they waiting for me to get tired? I could hear the owls. I couldn't believe how close they were. But what were these other sounds? Which strange beasts sound like that? Soon enough, time would tell. I wanted to pedal on through the night because it was much cooler than riding under the sun for hours and hours in the daytime. But I was getting tired. I needed to find a spot to camp. I found the only open spot and put up the tent as fast as I could and ran inside. I was in there maybe just a few minutes before I heard what sounded like a child screaming somewhere out in the forest. What was some kid doing out here? I reached up to unzip the door, but when I heard the kid again, this time it trailed off into some weird non-human sound. This wasn't a child. This was an animal attempting to lure me from the safety of my tent. I tried to text my family, but unfortunately so far out in the forest, my phone had no signal. I was alone, and I was in the dark with the beasts of the forest. I used my flashlight to write my journal, and when I was done, I just stared up at the night sky and let the forest have my mind. It was amazing out there. There was so much life, like the whole forest was alive. I was listening to all the animals and trying to imagine what their day-to-day lives were like. And then somewhere out in the blackness, I heard a branch break. All my muscles tightened and my heart started this weird rhythm. Something big was walking around in the woods. For a second I thought the coyotes had caught up with me. But whatever this was much too big to be a coyote. I could tell by the thick branches crumbling under its weight as it walked. I could hear the monster approaching me. Every step it took shrunk my body. The beast was so large that it caused entire parts of the forest to go quiet as it moved. I was afraid it would hear me shaking. I wished it would just wander away from me. And then several minutes went by, and I couldn't hear it anymore. Maybe my wish had worked. But suddenly it was there, inches from my head on the other side of my tent. I imagined its nostrils flaring as it took those hot and rapid breaths. The beast was smelling me out. It was hunting me. I let out the breath that I had been holding as quietly as I could, but with the way I was shaking, it was pretty hard to do it silently. The beast must have heard this because he jerked and grew quiet. He was onto me. It had figured out exactly where I was inside of my tent. I could sense its awareness of me. I froze. The beast froze. I wanted to try to grab my phone, but it didn't matter anyway. I knew I didn't have a signal, plus I didn't want to make any more sounds for fear it would trigger the beast to attack. Then the beast began toying with me by walking back and forth next to my tent. Its deep breath was just a few inches from my head. Still frozen, my mind began to fret. What about my kids? What if this is a bear? Or maybe a wild boar? Either of these animals can kill a man. And then, as if to twist my anxiety further, the night beast began to speak. Not in English, but in this bizarre rumbling hum. I felt like he was speaking directly to me. I had never heard an animal make sounds like that before. His vocalizations were deep and intricate. It was obvious that this was an animal with a high intelligence and a well-developed language. If I wasn't facing certain death, I might have thought it was beautiful. It was weird to find some sense of beauty in the most fearful state that I've ever been in. As I lay there, frozen in fear, and listening to its chanting, I thought of the forest beyond us. Strange how quiet it was out there. This refocusing of my attention beyond the beast did something weird. It was like as soon as my focus shifted, all of my fears started to dissolve. It felt as though the fear was literally draining from my body, like it was being washed away from me. And in its place was this feeling of inner peace. Now the beast was still here, but I felt peace with my life. The mistakes that I had made, the mistakes that I'm still going to. I was at peace with it. I had this deep inner forgiveness and acceptance. I made peace with everything in my life, and I made peace with the night beast. I felt in tune with the forest. Even though I was about to be eaten alive by some bloodthirsty carnivore, I found peace. It was like I went all the way through fear and came out the other side. If the beast was going to take this body tonight, then so be it. But the spirit inside of my body would experience no fear. My spirit was at peace. The next thing I knew, I awoke to the sound of a good morning bird singing its good morning song. Her chirps echoed through the forest. I thought about how blessed these animals were to wake up every morning to this beautiful sound. The early rays of the sun painted the sky in the most inspiring way. I survived! I survived! I felt victorious! Not just against the night beasts, but against fear. I had beaten fear. But the true test was yet to come. I cleaned up my camp and loaded up my bike with all of my belongings, and I watched as the dawn turned into morning. I hope I feel this way forever. I felt clear, strong, and confident. You know, that's what inner peace brings us. Inner peace comes with this clarity, this strength, and this confidence. And here I was, surrounded by a beautiful early morning forest. The dew and The fog and the colors and the smell, it just felt like the forest wasn't a stranger to me anymore. As I got ready to go, I looked back over my campsite. I didn't want to leave any garbage or anything, and that's when I heard something in the bushes. The night beast was still here. I slowly spun my head to look into the bushes and weeds, and I saw it standing there. It was bigger than I had imagined. Our eyes were locked. There would be no way to escape if it decided to attack. I watched as the giant muscles twitched. It must have weighed thousands of pounds. And here it was, right in front of me. I remembered that I had beaten fear. I hadn't forgotten. The peace was still heavy in my body. I felt like the beast somehow understood this. We stood there motionless for a few moments in a quiet staring contest. And then the beast bent down to eat some grass. The vicious night beast was a harmless cow. She taught me one of the greatest lessons of my life. The lesson that I'm here to tell you about. She taught me how to conquer fear. And the first part of that is knowing where fear comes from. Fear is born in our imagination. And fear lives its entire life in our imagination. Now that doesn't mean that fear isn't real. I can assure you that fear is very real. But it is an element of our imagination. My imagination convinced me that a cow, a harmless soul, was some bloodthirsty beast who took pleasure in taunting its prey before eating them alive. She wasn't trying to scare me. In fact, she was probably the scared one and came to me for protection. I started thinking about the other things that people are afraid of. The fear of failing. The fear of not being good enough. There's all kinds of fear. But let me tell you this. You are good enough. Your fear, all fear, does not exist outside of our bodies. It is born in our imagination, and in our imagination is where it has to die. How do we kill fear? We kill fear by taking away its food source. And that food, that fear must consume, that food is our focus and our attention. We take that away from fear, and it will starve to death. Just like my fear washed away from me in that forest when I refocused my attention. You have to take away fear's fuel and give it to something like love instead. Or beauty. But conquering fear is just the beginning. There's a whole new world out there for those who are willing to allow their inner peace to breathe. I ask you, whoever is listening to this, join our side, support, and if you can, advocate for inner peace. Or get me in contact with the right people, and I will bring peace to your school or organization, because no one who has inner peace will heinously take another's away. Namaste.